how good are you at buyer beware free agents?
Well, let's find out.
The edge defender class,
Yeah.
which you already gave it away, all of them.
Yeah.
The reason why they're potentially overrated, a bunch of them had a bunch of sacks. They had there's some 1 year wonder type of guys. There's guys that were products of the scheme, and because the further we research this whole thing, the pass rush is not always the catalyst of defensive success. It's more the complementary piece to what's happening with the coverage unit. I think we're finding maybe you don't want to completely overpay for certain pass rushers.
Yeah.
So let's start with the edge defenders. Buyer beware on whom, Sam?
So can I just slight segue, but it's relevant to this, right?
Yes.
So I've been pretty much steadily pissing off the entire state of New York over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
I think I've muted basically everybody in Buffalo at this point.
You're weak, man.
Yeah.
Weak.
But
running away from confrontation.
And everything we post now is like confirmation that PFF hates the Giants and or Bills. So somebody posted that we'd written some preview piece that was saying essentially the Giants don't have anybody of consequence hitting free agency. They're like, what kind of idiots are you? Marcus Golden is leaving, and he's been the first Giant since, I don't know who the hell it was, to have double-digit sacks in the season.
Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah. How can you say that he is not an important piece of this defense?
Lawrence Taylor? Wait, Strahan played there.
Right. There's no way that was right, because that's what he was saying.
Maybe you don't listen to an idiot.
Yes, but whatever. His point is double-digit sacks.
Vernon was there a couple years ago.
Yeah, Olivier Vernon, JPP, Strahan. There's no way one of those three people didn't have double-digit sacks. Anyway, double-digit sacks. Therefore, he's an excellent pass rusher. To what do you say, Steve?
I say he had 509 pass rushes. Sacks are overrated, and sacks do not predict future sacks.
Well, and to be fair, even like he had 64 pressures, which is a decent number as well, but 509 pass rushes.
If sacks were simply presented as a percentage of rushes, and you sorted the league, you just said sack percentage.
Yeah.
That would completely change the narrative on those players. Forget pressures, forget PFF pass rush grade, both numbers which have already been proven to better predict future pass rush performance. Take that out of the equation. If you just did sack percentage around the league, and this guy has 12 on 509 rushes, and then another guy has 12 on 350 rushes, immediately you would go from saying 12 and 12 are the same, and you'd have different context as percentage.
Here's the other thing. Here's some more context for you. 64 total pressures. 18 of them were unblocked, and 14 of them were cleanup pressures.
That's 32 out of all those?
Yeah, so half of his pressure was either cleanup or unblocked, which is why his grade sucks. So again, it's like, how come your grade doesn't match up with the numbers, nerds? It's like, well, this is why, because you're not looking far enough. Now, to be fair, you don't have access to this, so you don't know that this is the added layer of context. But this is why, right?
So
the grade is not a meaningless abstract number that's us subjectively at. Like it is.
I think you're talking to the wrong people.
Objective statistics. It's not. There's a lot of people out there.
We have millions and millions of listeners, all of them are smarter than this.
And you, apparently.
They're all smarter than this. They all have PFF Elite.
Here's the thing.
They all have PSV2. They all understand the context. I was first attracted to PFF because of this.
You were first attracted to PFF because we made you pay for the data.
I wanted the data for free, yes. Yeah. But before that, I initially said, wow, you said something that was not exactly what I thought it was because you're viewing the game in a different way. Now, I will admit, I did probably send some hate messages and emails and stuff like that. Like, you idiots, I actually remember it sending something to Neil back in the day. There was a game, 2009, two Jaguars cornerbacks had completely different stats, and one guy gave up 3 touchdowns and had a better grade than the other guy. I think it was Rashean Mathis and Derek Cox. Mm-hmm. It didn't make sense to me with the stats. But when I started to understand the system and that the stats don't always tell the story and blah, 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 and all that stuff, it made sense. I mean, pass rush is probably the easiest one where we've put a dent because the grades are so consistent. And then when you look back at sacks and projecting sacks, like it's so inconsistent, I think we've nailed that one.
I think there's a big part of the world changing right now in terms of fake news and everything is crap and blah, blah. All I would ask for people is if and when a situation arises where the grade looks strange, right? It looks weird, doesn't match the numbers, it looks counterintuitive to what you're looking at. Simply ask why that could be. Don't assume, well, it's obviously because they have a subjective bias system and they don't know what they're doing, right? We have 32 NFL team customers. We have never once sat down in a room, gone through tape with somebody in the NFL and had them come out of the other side going, you guys don't have any idea what you're doing. Like, it's always been, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. I can see, like, they get convinced of why the grade suddenly makes a lot of sense. So when a grade doesn't match what you think it should look like, ask why. And with Marcus Golden, it's a simple answer. The guy did have double-digit sacks. The guy had 64 pressures. That's a lot. On the other hand, he had a ton of pass rushing opportunities, 509, and half of his pressure was either unblocked or cleanup, which means he wasn't doing an awful lot to get those pressures. So that explains that one. And I think you would find the answer is similar for pretty much every scenario where that unfolds. Now, edge rushers.
Wow. Yeah, so I think they're all going to be overvalued again because they do make some of the highest money in the NFL in general. But you could start probably with Jadeveon Clowney and say, look, if he's going to have...
Wants to reset the marketplace.
If you're going to reset the marketplace, I just don't want to reset it. I'm not going to reset it for Jadeveon. He's a good, not great player, a guy who is ranked... he's ranked in the top 10 in PFF WAR over the last couple of years with his strong run defense and all that stuff. Last year, number 18 in WAR, number 20 from a pure grading standpoint. So he has a lot of value, but not reset the market type of value. I would start with Clowney. There are more egregious players. Again, we've talked about Shaq Barrett quite a bit. If you're just looking at the sacks and saying, look, this dude had 20 sacks, buyer beware on that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Clowney is a good player. He's turned into one of the best run defenders at the edge position in the NFL. He has never turned into the phenomenal pass rusher that people thought he would be.
He reminds me of peak JPP. I've mentioned this one before. JPP at his best was a top 3 run defender on the edge.
Same concept as well, like phenomenal athlete coming out. He'll develop into this incredible pass rusher. Never happened.
Was good, not great as a pass rusher the entire at his peak. He reminds me of peak JPP. Shaq Barrett, again, is different. He went from...
I'm so bummed, by the way, that JPP's nickname never sort of took off. I remember watching was it USF he was from?
Yes.
I remember watching a college game of his, and it was him. Who was the edge rusher opposite him?
George Selvey.
Yes. So there's the two of them on the same team, right? And the commentator was losing his mind because JPP's nickname at the time, allegedly, was the Haitian Sensation.
Oh.
That should have translated. That should have come through.
You think that's better than JPP?
Hell yes. The Haitian Sensation.
Maybe he would have had more sacks.
That's what I'm saying. If that had been his nickname all the way through the NFL, the dude would be he'd be the best pass rusher in the NFL.
Hard to disagree.
That's what I'm saying.
That was a good example of. George Selvey had like 20 sacks one year, and JPP had 3 because he was, a young player with crazy upside. He could do backflips. In case you didn't know. JPP also. Our guy Eric had a great question a couple days ago. What was the best non-need draft pick over the last X amount of years or in NFL history? Which is one of my favorite draft axioms. Right? Don't draft your needs, just draft the best players overall. Now the most valuable players.
That's a whole 6 T-shirts we got to change.
We got a lot of things. But you have the Vikings taking Randy Moss when they were already set at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I couldn't be bothered to think beyond that. I just was like, okay, that's the answer at the end.
Well, the one I always think of is JPP because they had Michael Strahan. They had Osi Umenyiora.
Oh,
and they drafted JPP.
When was Kiwanuka drafted?
And then they added him to the mix later.
After? Okay.
Yeah. But they did the same thing. So like Strahan moved on, they added Kiwanuka to the mix. They just kept saying, look, we gotta roll 3 deep at edge rusher. So I thought JPP was one of the better non-need draft picks because the Giants had 2 loaded defensive ends and then they had Kiwanuka ahead of time and then they added JPP to the mix.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I went out of order. But they added him to a loaded group of edge defenders is what the point I was trying to make. So Shaq Barrett, we've talked about him before.
I was thinking when he was asking that question that pretty much every scenario where that's happened, it's been good. Like the idea of when you're stacked at one position and you load another one, it's almost always beneficial.
Right. Like the Lions didn't take Aaron Donald because they had Sue and Fairley at the time, I believe. Right. By the way, both of whom were in the last year of their contract.
Yeah.
So there's as we get closer to draft season, there are two types of team needs. There are the ones that the fans you interact with on Twitter and block, right?
Mute more than block.
That you mute.
I block some.
Those fans are the short-sighted ones who said, the last thing I saw was my team did this badly, therefore that's what we need. Right? Like the Titans fan, like bad Titans fans are probably like, we need a quarterback because Tannehill's terrible. Right? And they might be right. But I mean, the most recent thing. Or Giant 49ers fans, we need a quarterback because we can't win with Garoppolo. Right? The last thing you saw. And then other fans who have, a team needs are multi-year needs. Teams that are smart, they draft a year in advance for their needs. When guys are in their last year of their contract, they're ready to replenish them. That's what the Lions could have done with Aaron Donald a few years ago, but they didn't. They stuck with Sue and Fairley, and then eventually lost both of them. Anyway.
I'm pretty sure it's like a team. I couldn't think of this one as I was sort of mulling over the question in my brain, but I'm sure some team has done that with cornerbacks as well, where they like had a stacked secondary and they added another top end corner, and it's been really good for them.
Yeah, we should look that up and see. But that always works well. Yeah.
All right. So Clowney, good, not great.
Shaq
I wouldn't
Barrett.
want to reset the market with him. Shaq Barrett had a ton of sacks. Barrett is again, his is a whole bunch of cleanup and unblocked plays, right?
He had a lot of good plays too. He had a lot of forced fumbles and all that stuff. The point is, though, it's still tough to duplicate.
His grade is effectively the same as it was when we were championing him as an underrated player. And everyone, and he wasn't even starting, right? He was like a rotational body in Denver. He wasn't getting that much playing time, and his grade is exactly the same when he's an every down starter, and he was chasing 20 plus sacks. So everyone's like, "Oh, that dude's a stud." It's like he isn't really. The thing about sacks is I don't want to say they're lucky because
they're not.
Well, they might be or they might not be. It depends, right? They're not the same thing for a start. A sack could be an amazing play.
It just can't be the number.
Yes,
a sack, one number.
A sack is not a uniform statistic, right? A sack can be a great play where you beat a guy, you beat two guys, you split a double team, you dominate in 2 seconds, you take the quarterback down. Amazing. They're always good results for a defense, but in terms of the quality of the actual defensive play, they vary from that end to you happen to be standing there being dominated at the line of scrimmage when somebody else forced the quarterback past you and you just reached out an arm and grabbed him.
So in our free agent rankings pages, which, by the way, our guys, I think, did a fantastic job of making this look good. The way we've got, did you see the 3 different views that we have? There's 3 different views.
I thought there was 2. There's 3?
PFF.com/NFL/free agency. Free-agency. Anyway, there's the slim view, which is just a list of players. Mm-hmm. There's normal view.
Yeah. Okay.
Then there's thick view.
Spelled?
THICC, millennial thick, as I like to call it.
Millennial thick.
So that's like the more in-depth profile. And if you go to Shaq Barrett in his thick view, you'll see a breakdown of the players with the most pressures and their win percentage and all that stuff. So his win percentage, so this is just the number of times that he beat a blocker, most often in one-on-one situations, but beat a blocker, right? Picked up a hurry or some sort of beaten block, 17.3%. And he had 20 sacks off of that. Calais Campbell actually had a higher win percentage, 17.9%, but only 6 sacks. Yeah. So a 14 sack difference, even though Campbell won more often. If you gave those guys the same exact win percentage next year, Campbell could have 12 sacks and Barrett could have 5. I mean, it could go any which way. So
the point is that is not an indication of finishing skill, mostly, right? There are a couple of players who consistently
lay off Brandon Graham.
No, I'm not. I'm going the other way.
Oh.
Saying there are a couple of players. I'm positive, Steve. I am an optimistic, positive outlook kind of human. You don't have to bring it negative every time.
Sorry.
There are a couple of players who have consistently throughout their career generated better than average finishing rates, if you like. The percentage of pressure that they're capable of turning into sacks. Almost most players don't, right? So when you get that kind of differential where the guy with a ton the guy who wins more often gets far fewer sacks, or the guy who wins less often has more sacks, it's not because he's a better finisher and therefore is more valuable. It's that he got kind of lucky that year. He had a ton of unblocked and or cleanup sacks, or he just got lucky. So one of the things we do is, you can't judge an offensive lineman by the number of sacks given up, right?
Definitely not.
Because once that guy is beaten, whether it's a pressure, a hit, a sack, or even nothing at all, is entirely down to somebody else, right? It's basically whether the ball comes out or not. So pass rusher beats offensive lineman at the line of scrimmage. You now have an indeterminate. You have the amount of time it takes you to run from that point to the quarterback is the amount of time the ball has to come out, and that basically dictates whether it's nothing at all. Quarterback didn't even know it was coming. Gets the ball out. You didn't touch him. It's literally nothing. All you did is win at the line. No pressure on the play. It's a hurry. Quarterback sees it coming, gets rid of the ball. It's a hit. Quarterback sees it coming, gets rid of the ball, but you nail him. Or you sack him. He may see it coming. You drill him before the ball comes out. It's a sack, right? All of those things are completely down to the quarterback in the passing game, not your ability to do anything.
Right.
So the same thing is true with pass rush. Once you win, whether it becomes a sack, hit, hurry, or nothing is basically not within your control.
It's also the act of winning is far more difficult than the act of finishing,
and
just from a percentage
translatable
standpoint.
and repeatable and predictive.
Like if you can only win quickly, say within 2.5 seconds, say 12% of your snaps, that's difficult to do. Now, once you win and 30% or 40% of those turn into sacks, okay, which is more difficult, right? So it's hard to win quickly. Anyway, all that said, Shaq Barrett was very good last season. He's a very good player. He's still young. He went from an underused, overperforming player to now a guy who's slightly overrated if you're just looking at sacks. I'm just not going to break the bank for him. He shouldn't have reset the market type of money either just because he had 20 sacks. However, performance-wise, pressure-wise, win percentage-wise, he was comparable to some very good players last year. Cameron Jordan, Donnell Hunter, not Aaron Donald, but Nick Bosa, Chandler Jones, Calais Campbell, who we mentioned. He is in that ballpark, but I would just be careful if you think he's going to put up 20 sacks again if you're just looking at that number.
Yeah, he is a solid pass rusher. It would probably be a mistake to think he's much better than that.
Yannick Ngakoue, another guy, probably 2 years removed from his best grade. He had an 81 grade in 2017. That had him ranked number 18 among edge defenders. Since that point, just from a grade standpoint, he's ranked 29th and 36th. So we're talking about a guy who can be an edge one, so to speak, for a team, the top edge defender for a team, but at the lower tier of the top edge defenders that are, number one edges. Yeah. So again, if you're expecting a guy that's going to be an annual 15 sack guy, just because he had 14 1 year in 2017, that's a little risky. And then the more obvious ones for us, Robert Quinn, Bud Dupree.
Bud
Dupree, most certainly, just because we're talking about a guy who in 2017 was our number 100 ranked edge defender.
He was better than crappy 1 year in his career so far.
That's a better way of putting it.
Thank you.
So in his career year last year, so he was the number 174th most valuable edge in 2017.
Most valuable edge.
According to ThickView over here. I think you need Elite.
How many edges do you think even played that year?
If you guys have PFF Elite, not only do you get Premium Stats 2.0, but you got to go check out the ThickView on free agency because you get WAR for these free agents. Our wins above replacement number. It's the first time we've ever released it. That's probably worth the price of admission as it is.
I'm now fascinated as to how many edges even played in a season.
I want to know if that's a typo.
No, I think it probably is right, but it's got to be like basically at the bottom end of the list, right?
So he was 174, then up to 73 in 2018, then up to 17. He'll be number one by next year.
Sure, that's how that works.
So 17th most valuable edge last year. Really good season. The problem with Bud is literally the only year that he was, better than average.
Yeah.
As an edge defender. And Robert Quinn, another guy, how many sacks did he have? Because people, I don't know. This is the thing. I don't even look at sack totals anymore unless I'm trying to tell the story about why they're overrated. That's or underrated. Because I just look at the grade and he was our number 47, Robert Quinn here, number 47 edge defender. Previous year, he was number 42, so very consistent there. And, only 647 snaps. That hurts his value just a little bit when you're just stacking him up from a WAR standpoint. That's not like break the bank.
I was on NFL Now last Friday.
Nice humble brag.
Thank you. And leading me in was a little segment with Charlie Casserly.
Oh, yeah.
Charlie thinks that they should get Robert Quinn signed up well before they sign Byron Jones. That's the guy they got to get locked down.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
I know.
No.
Yeah.
No. Byron Jones.
Yeah. They did at least say after Dak and Amari, so we didn't have to like go that crazy.
We have Quinn at number 53 on our free agency list.
The other one that people are going to talk about is Matthew Judon from Baltimore.
And we've covered this on the show before.
Well, he basically has the exact same story as Marcus Golden, right?
Yeah.
A lot of sacks, double digit, a lot of pressure, 62, 2 fewer than Golden, but 20 unblocked and 15 cleanup. So even more.
More than half.
Yes.
Are the ones that are dependent on other situations.
Yes, even
very
more
dependent.
of his pressure was either unblocked or cleanup compared with Golden. Now, his grade was better, which means when he was winning more decisively and quicker. But then you have to factor in what the Baltimore Ravens offense was doing in terms of scheming. Yeah. Sorry, defense.
Yep.
In terms of scheming, blitzing more than anybody else, getting him in favorable situations certainly more than Marcus Golden was in New York, and therefore benefiting his overall performance. Now, we've said it before, his grade in one-on-one situations, not good. And when he goes somewhere else that isn't the most blitz-happy defense in the NFL, he's going to be one-on-one a lot and have to actually win.
Yeah, I mean, just look, this is all of our analysis is based off of a lot of research, like long-term research. And then you can use like one-off examples just to kind of make your point. The one-off example is never the point. It's just a product of it. So the New England Patriots for years have essentially valued coverage over pass rush, right? Mm-hmm. They've said, look, we're going to cover well on the back end, and we're not completely interchangeable up front, but we're going to let Richard Seymour walk. We're going to let Chandler Jones go, trade him. We're going to let Trey Flowers go. I mean, they just let a lot of these guys go up front, and they don't really miss a beat defensively. I think the Ravens are getting to that territory where they're built similarly. They're 2 years. They let Zadarius Smith walk. Zadarius goes and has one of the best pass rushing seasons in the NFL, and the Ravens defense got better.
Yeah.
The same year they let Terrell Suggs walk and C.J. Mosley, who's an inside linebacker, not a pass rusher, but they let their 2 top pass rushers go. They replaced him with Matthew Judon, who is their number 3 rusher. He becomes their number 1. They scheme up all this pressure from him, which is based off the way the secondary works and the way the coverage works. So they're not going to go spend money for Matthew Judon. They're going to continue to believe that those edge guys in our system are interchangeable. Now, so this is, I mean, system matters and all that stuff. So if you're the Ravens, you're going to say, okay, we can make a Matthew Judon. You want a baseball analogy?
No.
Of that?
No.
I'm going to give you. I might make this part of my pitch here. I have to write this down for my pitch. Are you muting me?
I wish I could.
My pitch. We're going to make edge defenders like closers in baseball.
Okay.
And I just spelled it in UK style by accident. It didn't correct me.
UK style?
R-E instead of E-R, right? It isn't how you do.
Do what?
E-R. Anyway, listen.
It's what?
What happened in early money ball in baseball? You know what the closer is?
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to give you a smart team building strategy that teams like the Ravens can incorporate here.
Uh-huh.
So a closer in baseball gets the last 3 outs, he gets a save.
Yeah.
You would hate saves in baseball. You would hate it the way you hate sacks. Because it's just the guy who gets the last 3 outs instead of, outs 4, 5, and 6 out of the last 4th, 5th, or 6th out of the game, right? So they get a save. And, a 30 save guy is like a 10 sack guy. Oh, you got 30 saves. And those guys get paid. They're closers. Even though the guys pitching the 8th inning or the 7th inning could be better than them, whatever. So the Oakland A's got smart, and they said, we can make anybody a closer, right? If you let him pitch the last 3 innings, and he's good, he'll have 30 saves, 35 saves, 40 saves, whatever. And then you let them walk, and you get all these compensatory picks and all that fun stuff. I think in the NFL, teams like the Ravens might be able to do that with edge defenders, where they can almost say, look, we're going to build from back to forward. We're going to let these edge defenders rack up sacks and pressures, walk in free agency, and then after they sign big contracts, continue to accumulate the compensatory picks that come from them. That could be one of the new market inefficiencies that smart teams use because edge defenders always get paid. Now, it might not even be new. Teams could be doing this for a while, but that's one of those ways I think would be smart.
Okay. Can I give you another potential buyer beware guy at edge? Arik Armstead.
Yeah.
Actually played better than basically almost anybody else we've mentioned on the list, but contract year.
Right.
Huge outlier compared to what he's done in the past. I would be pretty concerned about banking on that happening again. as I would be basically with any huge contract year outlier guy heading into free agency.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to bite the bullet and just roll with it and hope he does it again. But it's always something that would concern the hell out of me.
So I would say this form, I want to describe this form of buyer beware for us is, I think there's going to be a lot of money thrown at these guys. And even if they all play like Khalil Mack, it's going to be tough to justify the dollar value for their performance. A different type of buyer beware would be, say, like the wide receiver list, right? I think the receivers are probably worth investing in more just because if they hit, like if Amari Cooper hits and you get number one wide receiver production, it's a game changer for an offense. It's a game changer for your team. I mean, I think you're instantly turning your offense around if you know you're getting number one production out of Amari Cooper or getting that out of AJ Green. The buyer beware component is the injury. The injuries to AJ Green. I think Robbie Anderson can be an awesome deep threat for a lot of teams, but maybe not a high volume or as high volume of a type of guy. I think the buyer beware component is viewed in different ways. I just don't know if you're ever going to get your dollar amount back from some of these edge defenders that you'd be paying for.
I think that's fair.
Any other positions or players that kind of stand out in that regard?
We have to talk about the running backs, aren't we?
I mean, running backs are always like this, right?
Well, all right.
Buyer beware on all running backs.
Yes. And it is obvious that the most clear example of this is Derrick Henry this year. How can you guys not have Derrick Henry in the top 5 of your free agent list? He's the best running back in the NFL. He just carried the Titans deep into the playoffs.
Ryan Tannehill.
He's the most valuable player. Yada, yada, yada. I mean, no. You know that's not true. Derrick Henry, A, was not the reason the Titans got that far. B, is not going to repeat it, even if he stays in Tennessee. And C, if he goes somewhere else that has a less beneficial environment around him, definitely won't repeat it. Every single team that has invested big money in a running back in the last several years already regrets the decision.
Yeah.
The last team that didn't, the last team that actually stuck to their guns, maybe it was just because they're cheap, or maybe it was because they actually understood how this works, was the Chargers not caving to Melvin Gordon's holdout. Melvin Gordon comes back, doesn't have the same kind of season, and now he's hitting free agency with an empty tin cup looking for coins as opposed to cashing in his monster deal. Now, sucks to be Melvin Gordon, like he tried to cash in when his stock was high, but the Chargers didn't buy into it, and now the dude is like half the value he was a season ago. The point is, do not invest in running backs because they're not worth it. They're not. And it's sad. Running back is fun to watch. It's a great position.
Yeah, I love watching Henry play.
Those dudes take more punishment than basically anybody else in the NFL, but you are not ever worth paying money to anymore. It's just not. There's just not the way the league works anymore.
Don't pay him. Don't pay him in the first. Don't
let him walk after his rookie contract. Draft another one.
Don't draft him in the first round. Don't pay him. I mean, let's not hammer it home any further. They're fun to watch. I love watching Henry run. He's entertaining. I'm not going to build my team around him. Now, I think what would be fascinating is if you put him in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. I wonder. So let's think outside the box here. Because Baltimore just brought in Mark Ingram, who is a big, bad, but not nearly as big as Derrick Henry, based off that picture.
Well, yeah.
He is a bad, mean runner. Averaged 5 yards per carry last year. And the head of steam that Baltimore's scheme / offensive line gives a running back is tough to tackle.
Yeah.
That makes Ingram a really good fit there. Could a high volume team like Baltimore, who we keep pounding the table for how smart they are, Sam, right? They're doing all the things right, pushing all the right buttons. What if Derrick Henry goes to a team like the Ravens and he's got 3 yards before contact, 4 yards before contact, and he's now full head of steam at linebackers and safeties? Could that be the place where he is actually worth the money because he's going to average 6 yards a carry because of Lamar Jackson? The scheme and the offensive line?
He'd be really good in that scenario. He'd probably lead the league in rushing. He'd look fantastic. But you would have to break the bank in order to make it happen, and you can get 80%, 85%, 90% of that production from a dude you draft in the third round who's paid a fraction, a tiny percentage cut of Derrick Henry's contract. So it doesn't make sense in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, just checking. So buyer beware on all free agent running backs.
Or you could wait a year until somebody else pays Derrick Henry the huge money, regrets it, gets rid of him, and then you can get him for half that.
You also have to believe the workload has to catch up to him at some point. It's not just the NFL workload.
High school, college, yeah.
High school. I mean, he has been toting the rock for quite a while here.
His college one is interesting because total, it's not actually that big. It's just that
it was that 1 year.
Right, it's just 9,000 carries came in one season.
With that 1 year, they really crushed him.
Yeah. But overall, he didn't have the biggest college workload.
Right. You mentioned I'm going to give you a tight end here, Austin Hooper.
Yeah.
The number that I pulled out here. I was responsible.
I like your number because it backs up 100% what I thought all along.
Yeah, and it's one of those where
PFF works.
The PFF grade itself was really good, 78.3. And it was number 8 among tight ends last year. And I had to go back and say, wait a second. I need to know how much of Austin Hooper's production was him winning one-on-one, because the more we talk, the best tight ends, the Travis Kelce's, the Gronks, the George Kittles, those are the guys you're like, I could put him anywhere on the field. I know he's going to win one-on-ones. Linebackers can't cover him. Safeties, nobody can cover him. So I went back and I looked at where did Austin Hooper get this production from? And it turns out 75.5% of his receiving production, 3/4 of his receiving, came on targets that we called either a hole in the zone or something underneath the defense. So he's either finding soft spots in the zone, cool, or catching a drag route or a flat route or something and creating yards after the catch or whatever it might have been. That is by far the highest percentage in the league. 3/4 of his production. Then I said, okay, how did he do against single coverage? Because we track this stuff. He has a 58.9 receiving grade.
There you go.
Well below the league average against single coverage since 2016.
Yeah.
So this is a multi-year sample. So I have a huge, buyer beware. So even with the PFF grade saying he was good last year, previous year said he was just okay anyway. But last year it says he was really good. And I think this is a really good example of, you guys lie at PFF. Your grade lies. And we say, yeah, sometimes the grade is inflated or the stats are inflated or something's inflated because of other things. And this would be one example of Austin Hooper getting some scheme help, getting some Julio Jones / Calvin Ridley are on the field help, and just not necessarily the mismatch weapon you want to spend a lot of money for at tight end.
I think Mike Renner was the one that said that you will never convince him that Austin Hooper is anything other than a replacement level tight end, which basically backs up 100% what I've always thought about him dating back to his Stanford days.
Yeah.
Same idea. And look, there's a skill set to finding soft spots in zones and, exploiting that kind of stuff.
Right. I'm not trying to diminish that.
It's just a way easier one to replicate than a skill set of actually getting open against people trying to cover you.
Right.
You can manufacture production out of anyone that's smart enough to understand the defense with the first way of doing things, right? Like Miles Austin, it's the Thomas Jones, right? It's that thing of he will get exactly what's given and no more. And that is the sort of Thomas Jones of receiving, is just understanding where you're supposed to be given the defense you're looking at.
Right.
And therefore you will get this target because that's what's open.
And so if you're the Falcons, you should look at this and say, okay, we could put maybe not anybody out there, but we could put the next, similar tight end out there and get some production. So we're not going to pay him. If you're another team, you have to just be careful.
The guy that always leaps to mind with this in terms of being the sort of receiver Thomas Jones is Miles Austin. You remember there was a couple of seasons where Austin was really good.
I thought he looked good, though.
So there's a couple of seasons where he was really, really good. But then the last couple of seasons of his career, it was like Miles Austin is getting you 100% what is there in terms of zone scheme and nothing else.
Right.
Like he is getting only what he is available to sort of sit in the gap of. He's not getting open to save his life if someone is actually covering him in man coverage.
Well, that was like Chris Hogan in New England as well.
So, same idea.
Hogan had a big year where he kind of had some busted coverages that he ran behind, and Brady and him had a good rapport, and then all of a sudden it was like, all right, that's not going to happen anywhere else.
Right.
And it hasn't, or didn't. So that's our buyer beware section for free agency. I mean, buyer beware in general, free agency. Just be careful. Get that second wave. Don't spend too much money in free agency.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.